Okay, we are live. Dynasty Saturday Night 5. Another Saturday night of talking Dynasty. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review if you're listening to the Going for Two podcast feed. And obviously, if you're watching us here on the video, whether it's live or later on, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, etc., etc. I'm Brian Ford here with my co-host Josh Walker. Josh, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Glad it's the playoffs. Get to watch some football. I'm also really ready to talk about rookies.
Yeah, it's we've been hearing about this 2023 class for a while, and it's sort of getting to be more real, and now that the fantasy playoffs are over, for Dynasty folks, it's rookie fever time, right?
Yep.
And I think there are some pitfalls to that, right? Like we can get so wrapped up in the shiny new toys and overvaluing draft picks and all that. But it's fun, right? Because it's really the only draft that we have after the startup. Is the rookie draft every year, and each year I get a little bit more involved in the process of researching and evaluating rookies. Um, how do you go about trying to figure out what rookies you like and the rankings and things like that?
Well, before this year, this is the first year I'm actually going to dive into a lot of tape. Honestly, before this year, I just found some guys that I really trust and found out that I can trust with college players and rookies, a lot of the campus Canton guys,
Mm-hmm.
a few of the people from football guys. And I would honestly just read all the stuff they would do and then kind of gauge that based on them and other experts have to say and kind of gauge on the guys I know I like and what type of players I like. But I'm actually really excited to get into looking at tape and actually doing more myself as opposed to just regurgitating other people's content and hard work, which is a lot of what we do anyways, but I'm excited to do it on my own this time.
Right on. Yeah, I'm a little different. Each year I get deeper and broader as far as like the research that I do. But I will not pretend to be a guy that like is grinding tape and slowing things down and frame for frame and saying, oh, well, when he twists that way, he uses too much of his upper body in the cut and things like that. It's just not my thing. I don't have an eye for it, right? I am just a sponge. I just aggregate information, all during college season and particularly now. I like you, I look at folks who I trust. And sometimes I'll watch them watch the film in front of me, and I think that helps. Other times, I'll see what they say, and then I'll go watch the film after that and say, do I see what they see? You know what I'm saying? But I'm not a person who's gonna like, okay, let's turn on Roshan Johnson's tape, versus Texas A&M, and slow it down and judge him that way. I'm just not the expert like that. But I just aggregate as much information as I can, and eventually just kind of come to my own conclusions. And so as far as like how I rank guys and things like that, based on what I tend to look for in players, and so every year it gets bigger and bigger. I mean, at some point, I'm going to have to pare it down. Really, my spreadsheet is already out of control, and it's January. But I will say this: the earlier you start, the better off you'll be. And so we're here starting a little early as well, and that's kind of the theme tonight is some of our early thoughts on the rookies. And Kyle checking in. Hey, how you doing? Always good to see you, Kyle. At Senra Says on Twitter, and also a Going for Two podcast host, and also I believe the Packers, right, is the one he has a Packers podcast, right? Or am I getting him confused with somebody? Kyle's gonna kill me if I'm getting him confused with somebody.
Yeah,
live on YouTube.
It doesn't ring a bell, but I'm not saying that.
I know he does a podcast outside of Going for Two.
I thought it was just a Dynasty podcast, honestly.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well, maybe Kyle will fill us in and chastise me for getting it wrong live on YouTube. So, like I said, it is early in the process, and these takes are really just based on the information that we have now. There's still a lot Full press Packers pod. I was correct. All right. So there's still a lot of information that we don't have and things that we still need to see. But yeah, so let's get started with our early rookie takes, our early rookie thoughts. I'm going to start out and with a sort of broad statement, and then sort of how it applies to the 2023 class, and that is draft capital and landing spot matter. I know there are some folks who say it doesn't, and it's all about the talent, and you bet on the talent. And when you're doing rookie drafts before the NFL draft, or even before things like the Senior Bowl and the Combine and things like that, yeah, I mean you're going based on what you know and with the talent, but it matters. And right now, when you have no Shrine Bowl, no Senior Bowl, no Combine info, it's looking like it's going to matter perhaps more than it has in other years. One, because the class is so deep and I have a lot of guys bunched together. So what's going to differentiate, Charbonnet from Tank, from Evans, from Tucker, from Izzy, is going to be where they're taken and where they land. And also, we have a lot of seniors, right, which adds to the depth of the class as well. And those are folks who, the early declare doesn't apply to them, right? So now we have this group of people who are bigger than usual, and we need to sort of suss out, okay, sure, early declare box, they're not checking it. What do we know, right? And part of pulling those guys apart and differentiating them from the early declares or from each other is going to be, where they're drafted to and where they land. Let me give you an example real quick. So on Dynasty Fever, we did our first rookie mock just this past week. We did 2 rounds, right? And Sean Tucker went 90th to the Cowboys, right? So lower than we expected in the computer generated mock, right? And a landing spot that, you could argue is good if Pollard goes, but, is not, say, ideal as if he went to like Miami, right? So based on that, a talent that a lot of folks are pegging in sort of like the, 107 to 112 area is slipped to 205, right? So it does matter. And in a year when I have a lot of guys bunched together, what's going to differentiate them from each other, what's going to separate them out, what's going to decide who's the top of the tier and who's the bottom of the tier, I think draft capital and landing spot is going to play a big role.
No, I agree. And I think one of the points I think you'll touch on in a little bit, a lot of the running backs are, I don't want to say similar because they all play different, but I have them ranked very similar, and landing spot could differentiate someone from being, running back 5 all the way to running back like 10 or 12. There's just on first glance, there's 5 or 6 guys right there that landing spot will matter where I put them in my final ranking. So
absolutely. And speaking of draft capital and landing spot, your first rookie thought is?
Yeah, so this is probably going to be one of the most, if not the most polarizing player in the draft. It's Anthony Richardson. And I probably wouldn't know as much how to gauge this, or at least personally, if I didn't see this happen with Malik Willis last year. And the only reason I put those two together is both of them are extremely raw as far as quarterback goes. They are making accurate passes, right reads, handling pressure, all that. But they are also very athletic and very good at running the football. So my way of gauging Anthony Richardson is I'm going to see where the NFL scouts and people who know a lot more than I do decide he goes. And if he goes like first round, then he's probably going to be my quarterback 3 behind Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. If he falls to like late second, early third, I'm probably going to bump him down a little bit. He should still be fairly high up in the quarterbacks, but it's definitely going to put a pretty big knock on him if teams aren't ready yet to make him the guy. So
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to say at the beginning of the show was that it's going to be an agree fest tonight, because I looked at Josh's takes and I'm like, yep, I'm with you. But there's a slight disagreement here on this one, and it's more about the comparison to Willis. I think in a broad sense, the idea that dual threat, underdeveloped as a passer, raw-ish, that sort of thing. I think, yeah, those are they're comparable. But I think when we zoom in a little bit, we see that Richardson is a bigger, more physical runner. I think he's a little more pass first than Willis was. Although to Willis's credit, he wasn't just a run first like Malik Cunningham or something like that, right? So I think there is that difference there, and but I agree. When we went into the draft process last year, on the eve of the draft, when everybody was saying Malik Willis is a first round lock, I think people are getting sick of my victory lap. But my prediction was no quarterback's going to go till 20. It's not going to be Willis, and in fact, he's not going to be a first rounder, and I ended up right. I think the difference this year, though, is what's wrong about Richardson's passing is, I think, better than what's wrong about Willis's passing. Yep. First of all, like I said, bigger, more physical runner, younger, so more moldable. Willis was out of eligibility, but what I see wrong with Richardson's passing is not just the inexperience; he's only thrown 66 passes, but we're talking about touch. Adjusting velocity. We're talking about, not forcing it as much sometimes. Whereas I think with Willis, from what I remember correctly, there was a bit more fundamental mechanical issues that I was worried about. I just didn't like the way he looked. Now that big ceiling Richardson could be really low floor. And I will say this, that if he does go in like the third-ish round, like Willis does, then obviously I have to rethink what I think of him. I don't even think he's worth a first-round pick in the NFL. I don't think he should be. I don't think he deserves it, but he's going to be, I think. And so it's going to have to factor into our decisions.
No, I think people are going to see, especially what Justin Fields has done. Making up for. In Fields' case, it's more lack of weapons as opposed to lack of, passing prowess. But I think they see that and see that they can – someone might take a chance on him that wants to take a shot on that upside. But, yeah, more than likely won't.
Did you mention – oh, no, I thought you mentioned a landing spot for him. So he went in the computer-generated mock. He went 16th to the Commanders. I think that's actually a pretty good spot. Yep. Let Howell and Heineke, do their thing for a year, and Richardson, who I think needs to sit, will be able to sit. I think that's not a bad place to be. So, but if he goes somewhere where they're going to try to put him in day one, they could ruin him, I think. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. And what immediately popped into my mind, and this was just like the first thing, was like a Greg Roman-led offense, maybe like something like what the Titans used to run. So maybe even the Falcons, Ravens, something like that. Somewhere where they could instantly put him in and be able to give him run plays, read options. But I hope that doesn't happen. So
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Daniel Jeremiah's mock 1.0 came out today. And in fact, Richardson went 22 to the Ravens. So.
Really? See?
I think that's assuming Lamar doesn't sign, but yeah, like you said, even if they keep him, he can learn for a year, or whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, or more than a year, depending on because I guess you could tag Lamar, right, for a year, let Richardson learn, and then yeah, cool. So we talked about the depth of the class. We talked about the running backs. So that my next rookie thought is the running backs are deep. They're going to be fun, but they're deep with a bunch of fantasy football RB2s.
Mm-hmm.
It's tempting to look at the number of running backs and get super excited about them, right? But when we look at what the real upside is of some of these guys, what we're talking about is probably solid fantasy football RB2s, other than Bijan, right? The ceiling on some of these guys is not quite as high as I think people, especially like the casual fan, might expect. So for me, right now, the information we have, I'm going into these rookie mocks with I can get running back later.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of them, and there's not high ceiling. So that's going to push up the other guys on the draft board. It's going to push up the wide receivers who are not as deep, right? It's going to push up an Addison. It's going to push up a JSN. It's going to push up, if you like QJ, it might push him up a little bit because, in the end, is Tank at 110, say, going to be a huge difference from, Zach Evans at 2.4, 2.5? Like, probably not, right? So I think for me, it's going to push guys up the draft board. I think it really solidifies Mayer's spot as a for sure first round pick at a tight end premium as well.
No, I agree. And that mock we did earlier, I'm kind of surprised Mayer fell to the second round. Yeah, with all these running backs, and which I'm about to expand on one here in a second, but I mean, I've seen good running backs on similar tiers go in the third round even. So I'm definitely going to try and boost up and get a good wide receiver or tight end early on if I can.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Speaking of running backs.
Yeah, so this one is going to be – I can already tell because I've only seen his name pop up on a few people's like websites that I've looked at, like fairly high up above, like in the late 20s. And it's someone I'm going to be higher on. And I just lost my spot. It's Israel Abanaconda. I hope I'm saying that right.
Izzy.
Yeah, I
put you have an Izzy fan here in me, so I'm here for it. Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I saw that when I took him in the – well, speaking of, we did a little fun rookie mock draft with some people from Going for Two, and I was able to get Izzy, I think, 304. Mm-hmm. So started the third round, and I'll take that. Honestly, probably going to be taking him in the second round. But, yeah, I mean, what's not to like with him, really? He finished tied for first in touchdowns at Pitt. He was 12th in the nation in yards. And I was looking through Pro Football Network. They were one of the ones that's a little higher on him. And on that site, it showed that he averages 2.46 yards after contact and had 46 missed tackles and 38 runs of 10-plus yards. So I think there's big playability. There's ability to make people miss. He should run sub 4.4 in the 40. And I think once the combine comes and people really see his athleticism and really take a look at his film and tape, I think he's going to shoot up the boards. I mean, maybe to the RB like 6, 7, 8 territory, but even then, I don't think he's going to be there for a lot of people. So I'm going to be scooping in, getting him in the second round and be very happy.
So I love him too. I'm going to have some slight disagreement here, though. I don't expect under 4.4 at the combine, and I don't think athleticism is perhaps as good as you think. I see more of just accelerating classic downhill runner that is a tough runner. A lot of folks say he has a 2-down profile. I know Dallas Hyder, for example, a guy that we had on Dynasty Fever earlier this week, talks about how he's underrated as a receiver and has fairly soft hands. I mean, you're looking at a good size here, 215, right? And he won't be 21 till October, which is kind of exciting as well. Again, this speaks to the idea that like in right draft capital, right landing spot, and you're going to see a lot of people be Izzy fans, I think, by the time things come to the rookie draft. And I don't think you're going to be able to get Izzy at 3.4 IRL.
No, and the main thing about the athleticism because I actually did watch a little bit of his tape. He's one of like the quickest accelerating, like you said. His acceleration is so good. He can get the top speed so quick that I think that's why he does have a lot of 10-plus yard runs, because he seemed in the few games I watched, he's decisive, hits his hole, and he hits it hard. And if you don't hit him with your full body and your full chest, he's going to run right through the tackle.
Yeah, averaged. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'd just say I'd be interested to see what he runs. Just place a little friendly wager just for bragging rights. I think it's around 2.44 or under.
4.44 or under, you're saying?
Yeah. 4.4, 4.42, 4.43.
That's more in the ballpark that I'm thinking of. I think he might be a little closer to 4 or 5 in the end, but with that size though, right? Like the
Mhm.
analytics folks are gonna like you if you're at a 4.4 or a 4.5 because that's a pretty good speed score.
Yeah,
Um, when you're 215 and running like a 4.45, say, like split the difference, right? That's you're gonna
absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, he's definitely going to be somebody interesting to watch. And I'm an Izzy fan as well. So plus, I mean, the name, right? Like Izzy. I mean, come on, you
Yeah,
gotta love that, right?
it's hard not to get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah. um. So I think for me, the next one I want to talk about is a guy I don't seem to like as much as some other people. Sort of on the flip side here. And that's Quentin Johnson. Um, I don't like him, especially at cost. I don't like him as wide receiver one. Um, so listen, there's ceiling there, right? He's 6'4", he's 215, he's athletic, right? He makes great highlight reel catches. He's great at contested catch. Really good boundary presence, right? He's elusive and has good contact balance, right? Like he's like big, but kind of unicorny in the sort of athletic department, right? Um, I think, however, he's a bit of a project, and high ceiling projecty type guys are guys that I don't like spending a lot of draft capital on, right? So some of the knocks on him have been, these raw, um, that he's got some rounded cuts, or that we've seen inconsistent effort and hands, right? Like he'll make a spectacular catch and then drop like an easy one. Um, and and I think that I've seen him. How can I put it? Like DBs get an edge on him in his routes that like they shouldn't be getting on a 6'4", 215 guy, right? Um, and I mean, case in point, another big physical guy, Keely Ringo, right? Pretty much shut him down in the national championship game. So, on the biggest stage, he kind of got shut down. So that's a little concerning too. I can't see him as wide receiver one right now. He slipped to 111 in the Dynasty Fever mock I did. Do you remember where he went? I think he went a little higher than that in our going for two mock, right?
As you keep going, I can look it up real quick.
Yeah.
I
So
think it was
when
top
I
6 or 7.
yeah when I think about big guys that I like much better at cost, right? I'm thinking about guys like Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State, Cedric Tillman, Tennessee, Rashee Rice, although Rashee Rice is only 6'1", so he's not quite in that big body the way that Hutchinson and Tillman are. I mean, even a guy like Dante Demas, right? Like 6'4", 215, just like QJ, and a 4-star recruit just like QJ. He just happened to be on a. I mean, he underwhelmed. I'm not gonna say he didn't, but he was on an underwhelming Maryland offense too. That took a 5-star, Raheem Jarrett, and didn't do much with him. Like Talia Tonga Vailoa is not exactly the quarterback you want for those types of guys. So I think you're going to see value with some big guys like the ones I named. Even Hazelwood, at cost is going to be a better value and lower risk than a guy like QJ. Now I could be wrong. Last year Watson was a guy I would categorize this way: big, athletic, raw upside, projecty, weird hands. And I was wrong. Like he showed out much earlier than I expected. I thought he would take a little longer to develop. Although it should be said, a lot of his production was in the touchdown department, right? And it's not like he's fixed every flaw in his game, right? So, I mean, if QJ's there at like 110, 111, I don't know. Maybe I take him at that value. Maybe I trade out, and try to get another guy later. There's something about it. I just don't love it. And I think people throwing him up there as this unquestioned wide receiver one, which we're going to talk about in a second, is just, it's just not it. So did you find where he went?
Yeah, he went 1.17. So he was a third wide receiver off the board after Addison and JSN. I think my thoughts, if you're sitting at the end of the first round and he's there, I don't think it hurts to take a shot on him, because by that point you're sitting there looking at plenty of RB2s. You could probably get another one. And teams probably, unless you traded for this spot, it's in a good spot. So you could take a chance on someone, because theoretically you might not need him this year. And if you're there on a rebuild, you probably have a few other firsts before this. So, I think into the first round, I think you should take a shot on him.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. You're at 110. You like the landing spot and draft capital for Anthony Richardson. You taking Richardson or QJ?
I'm taking Anthony Richardson over QJ, I think.
Is it because it's super flex or?
Mostly, but also I think because the way Anthony Richardson runs, it's pretty special. So I think if he gets a good spot with a good coach and a good system, even if he's not the best passer, a la Jalen Hurts last year, he could still be fantasy relevant, especially in a super flex league as a rookie. Mm-hmm. So I think I would.
So you and I think, are going to agree on this next one about who is a wide receiver that we like.
Yeah, and honestly, this one's I have this person in a tier of their own. It's Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like Addison a little bit, but he has a lot more flaws than I could come up with for JSN. So I'm going to have JSN in his own tier. And honestly, if your name's not Bijan Robinson, Bryce Young, or CJ Stroud, I'm taking JSN over everybody else. And the main reason why is, as a sophomore on a team with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, he was able to put up 1,600 yards at Ohio State with 9 touchdowns, and he was the third option. I think people are overlooking this year that he didn't play and just see just how dominant he was as a sophomore. And, he lacks top-line speed. He won't run like a 4.3, but at the same time, he's so good at route running. I think he's a better route runner than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were coming out. And that was the main reason I liked both of them. I think he's just too good. And I think people are just – I don't know why. They're just not putting him up there. I've seen a lot of places have him as 10th overall, wide receiver 4, behind Quentin Johnson and Addison. And I'm just going to be – like I said, if I'm not in the top 3, I'm going to be taking JSN every chance I get. He's going to be my guy this year, I feel like. Kind of like Olave was last year.
Yeah, I have some slight disagreement. I don't know that I love his route running as much as you do. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think it needs more polish. I don't think it's at the level that Olave was at. But your point about, listen, here's a guy who, produced with like big numbers on a team with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who are in people's, top 10, 12 dynasty wide receivers right now. And who, for what it's worth, not that they're going to say bad things about him, they say he's better than them. I just, I think the sort of weird 2022 that he's had has made people back off a little bit. And I think, Quentin Johnson's development, because you got to remember, this is like, with Quentin Johnson, if I'm correct, like only the 5th year that he's played organized football, right? So, when he's taken a step in his development. So, with a weird 2022, and that's when, and Addison sort of staying, safe and productive and not taking the step back. I mean, JSN kind of got lost in that shuffle, and for me, he's wide receiver 1, unquestioned. The only thing that would make me maybe put Addison like a tick ahead of him is if he gets a really bad landing spot that I just don't like, with a crowded wide receiver room or a bad quarterback and in a very vanilla offense or something like that. But yeah, I think also folks are a little sleeping on him as far as what he can do as a deep threat. I don't lump him in with even Addison, but especially guys like Josh Downs or something, or as like a slot guy, right? Like even though he'll operate out of the slot a lot, like he's a little bigger and better at deep as a deep threat than a lot of slot guys are in the NFL. And so I love, he's 21, right? Like what's not to like, right? Like I love JSN, so plus one there, yeah. Looks like we lost Josh. No, is he back? Hey, he's back.
Sorry.
It's all right. It happens. Technical difficulties, but yeah, I was just waxing poetic about JSN and how we're both on team JSN. So let's see here. Where do I want to go next? We're going to talk about two more divisive prospects, one for me in the quarterback range and one for you in the wide receiver range. We're going to talk about Will Levis. One thing that's important to remember about rookie process and rookie season is it's super early right now, right? Like it's January 21st. We don't have a whole lot of information, right? So you shouldn't get take lock, right? Like where you either fall in love or hate a player and it kind of, sits in your brain and just sort of blinds you to new evidence, right? Not sticking to your priors too much, not gaslighting yourself into that your judgment was maybe super wrong, but incorporating new information and new data into the process. I know, not to get too personal or whatever, but folks may know I'm autistic, and one of the executive functioning issues that a lot of autistic people have, including myself, is it's hard for us to get off one line of thinking, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think contributes a little bit sometimes to when I'm slow to raise guys, particularly rookies, up my board, or kind of am slow to lower guys that I love and that sort of thing. All that said, at the moment, right, I want nothing to do with Will Levis. This idea that Will Levis is Josh Allen, I think we're losing our minds here, right? Yes. Are they comparable in sort of, skill set, and that, Allen coming out of college was considered projecty and kind of raw? Yes. But it also should be said that Allen is very much an anomaly with that kind of jump from raw in college to, elite, especially at the quarterback position, right? Will Levis is going to be compared to Anthony Richardson a lot because they're both, have passing flaws, but are athletic and can run well. Listen, he's got a big arm, right? The rest, I just can't get on board, right? It's hero ball, it's hospital balls, it's bad decisions. It's even when he runs, opening himself up to big hits, extending plays too long, and not throwing the ball away, which also leads to interceptions and or taking big hits. He needs to develop just like Richardson, but I think the ceiling is lower here. I like a lot more of what I see out of Richardson so far than what I see out of Levis. And important to note too is that they're almost 2 years apart in age, right? Like Levis is going to be 24 in June and Richardson is going to be 22 in May, right? So, Richardson is more like, I think, moldable, Levis has these sort of bad habits set in, right? Levis's TD to interceptions this year was 46-25. Like, come on. I understand that his offensive line wasn't great or whatever, but they're both playing against SEC defenses. Like, I want nothing to do with Will Levis at the moment. Like I said, I don't think either of them are worthy of a first-round NFL pick. Sadly, there's probably like an 80% chance they both will be first-round NFL picks. And therefore, I don't think either of them really warrant a first-round rookie draft pick. But sadly, because of their draft capital, they probably will be worth rolling the dice on at some point in the first round. I'm going to do everything I can to not take Will Levis. If I'm at the 106, right, I'm taking Addison before I'm taking Will Levis.
Yep.
But what do you think about him?
Well, I couldn't tell if it was like a bit or he was being serious, but there's a video that I saw going around that Will Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee.
Oh, yeah. Another reason to hate him.
I mean, that right there is enough for me to say, you're on my no draft list. You're probably ahead of Gabe Davis. Like, I will never have him on my team just for that. But even besides that, everything you said, I agree with 100%. There's not even anything I want to pick apart about that. I'm not a Will Levis fan. I don't think he's going to be super good. He might get drafted in the first round, but even then, I'm still not going to touch him. The only way I might take him in a rookie draft is like round 3 or 4, and he's just not going to be there.
No, yeah, I don't. So, I mean, the only way he's going to be there is if he gets the Willis treatment in real life. You know what I mean? Which
even then
look like it's going to happen.
Even then, that just is proof to me that he's not even going to make it my 5th, 6th round rookie drafts.
Yeah. So, interesting though. I was told, I haven't looked it up to confirm, but I was told, which breaks my heart and yours too, Michael Mayer is also a mayonnaise and coffee guy.
No, that's someone from USC or Michigan put that out there to hurt his draft stock. That was a personal attack against Notre Dame.
That is propaganda.
It is. I don't believe it.
Hold on, we have a Canada information here. So Kyle saying if Will Levis was Canadian, he would pronounce his name Levi. Okay, I can buy it, and of course he would say that he's on a football organization, and he's going through the development process as well. Yeah, not sure that would change his dynasty value, Kyle. I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think he could pronounce his name anything that he wants. He could pronounce his name Favre, and it's not happening. But and so you have another divisive prospect with on-field and off-field issues. What's your take?
Yeah, so this one's Kayshon Boutte. Before any of this started, towards the end of the college football year, I thought I was going to be really high on him, and I still might be. But he is one of those guys who's also a little polarizing. But the main thing I'm worried about, or not even worried about, the main thing that just I was thinking about here, he was supposed to go back to LSU. Now apparently comes out there's some sex scandal between him, some coaches, and I'm not going to really get into that. But rumor has it he was asked to leave after declaring he was going to stay back. And that in itself, I think, is going to be a red flag to a lot of teams that the LSU just didn't want him there and kind of forced his hand to go into the NFL. If they look down on this, he could fall a few rounds. They might question his integrity, all that stuff. And I don't really think, that's as big of a deal as a lot of people make it. But I do think if he drops in the NFL draft or if people just kind of forget about him, I'm going to take a shot on him later when he falls to a discount because I think he has potential to be a top 5 wide receiver in this class, maybe even top 3, just given his skill set.
Sure, yeah. But
I'm just going to monitor his pre-draft interviews, all this stuff, kind of see how he handles it all, how he handles the questions, how NFL teams evaluate him. Mm-hmm. And if he goes into the first or second round as a, high-end wide receiver draft capital, I'm going to bump him up. Mm-hmm. Maybe even ahead of Addison just because I have questions about him. Mm-hmm. But it will be interesting to monitor that as we go forward. So that's going to be one of the things we'll be watching the most.
Yeah, Boutte is very interesting. So, 6 foot 190 as compared to Addison's 6 foot 175. He's 20 on draft day, but he turns 21 in May. Mm-hmm. And Addison's 21. You mentioned the off-field stuff with the sex party. It's interesting because I haven't heard much since. Like that thing got posted, the rumor came out, like a couple of the LSU staff who were supposedly involved in it are gone now too, and then coincidentally, Boutte's like, I changed my mind, I'm coming out, but there hasn't been much since that substantiates it or doesn't. right? The NFL, as much as we have a lots more information than we used to, and there's lots more rookie experts out there to pull info from and that sort of thing, and there's lots more football insiders than there used to be and that sort of thing. The NFL has the best information, right? They have information sources that we don't have. They're gonna do their best. They're gonna do their due diligence. They're gonna investigate everything. And like you said, interviews are gonna matter, and we'll see. We'll see what they think of Butte. I think the NFL will be a lot more forgiving in 2023 to an alleged sex party than they were several years ago to photo evidence of somebody wearing a gas mask bong, right? Laramie Tunsil. So I don't know. I don't know how much it's gonna matter. What I do know though is that people have added on top of that some on-field concerns with Butte, that he didn't really adjust well to his new slot role, particularly early in the season. He seemed to regress. I don't know. I know, Dallas pointed out on Dynasty Fever that we have to also take into account the ankle thing and that he had surgery in the off season. So, I think he's a guy like a lot of folks in this class who as you said, draft capital landing spot is going to matter, and that will depend, unfortunately, at least somewhat on this whole, for what it's worth, someone goes to a sex party, I raise them in my rankings, but that's just me. Yeah.
No, and so one quick comparison that kind of just popped into my head. Do you see him kind of being like this year's Kadarius Toney? People always, not so much skill in how they play, but more so like they talk about his upside, but there's also always on the field issues, team issues, being injured when he's, not actually maybe injured, people say. So that comp just kind of popped in my head, and I hope he sheds that comp because I hope he does a little better.
The difference for me there is that Butte's been a Debbie Darling for a couple of years. I don't really think Toney was.
That's fair.
And going into the NFL draft, Toney was NFL scouts like him more than the fantasy community, and I don't think that's true with Butte.
Okay.
Right? And also, Toney's issues are present now in the NFL, right? Butte's are now in college. He may shed them in the NFL.
True.
But either way, certainly he has the potential to be, pardon the pun, hamstrung by this stuff.
Just had to.
And end up, struggling in the beginning of his career, like Kadarius Toney, right? So, all right. So my final rookie take, and I'm going to do my best to not go on for an hour, partly because I'm autistic, but also just because, whatever. I love going really deep. I love sleepers. I love, my spreadsheet with, 40 wide receivers on it. And I love pulling names out of the hat and saying, like, watch out for this guy. Keep this guy on your radar. Blah, blah, blah. And that list could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, right? Because part of rookie fever is, I think, especially early in the process, finding a reason to like everybody, right? Looking for the possibility that some of these value guys or off the radar guys could shine, right? So I'm going to give you a few names to watch for, mostly in the positive sense that haven't been talked about a whole lot, but I think should start to get on people's radars. One thing that that's not on the sheet that I'm just thinking of now is, Zach Evans and Zach Charbonnet, right? This I want folks to keep their eye on more for which Zach is going to end up on top, right? Evans, Debbie Darling, that now all of a sudden is fun to hate. And I see reasons why, right? But I also see reasons why that there's elements to his game that are still there, and there are reasons to like him, right? Charbonnet, however, another interesting story, right? Breaks, the freshman record at Michigan for touchdowns with 11, has a weird sophomore year, right? It's 2020, it's the COVID year. So the Big Ten doesn't play many games. Michigan's offense is just weird and terrible that year. Hassan Haskins winds up sort of overshadowing him, and he has a very low production year, right? And he's a California kid, goes back to Cali, goes to UCLA, puts together 2 very good years. In fact, people were somewhat surprised that he went back to school for his senior year because they thought, like, the junior year was good enough, and now he's going to be a non-early declare and et cetera, right? But he's a very interesting guy who's getting more and more buzz. And I think, when I think about the bunch of of running backs that are together, the 2 Zachs are in that bunch, right? I sent a humorous tweet, about my RB3 this year and I just strung together a bunch of last names as if they were one person, right? And Evans and Charbonnet are in there. So I think those are 2 Zachs to watch out for and see where they end up in the rookie process. Charbonnet, if he runs like a 4.4, 4.45, like, could be wheels up.
Yep.
Evans, we'll see. People are finding ways to knock his game, including that one of the reasons he had so few carries was that, Kendre Miller and, Quinshon Judkins are as good or better than him, So something to watch, the 2 Zachs. A running back who is on the smaller end, and that's never good, but who really has been productive is Tyjae Spears out of Tulane. So he'll be 23 in June, so he's not, young, but 5'10", 190. If he comes in at like 180, 185, I'm going to be like, right? But, he's got speed. He's quick to the edge. He's got burst, 6.6 yards per carry. He's really rising up through people's draft ranks. He's elusive and tough, especially for his size. His size and strength may limit his draft capital. But if he shows out at the combine, he's already rising up draft boards. He's an interesting guy to take a look at. I believe he's in one of these senior games, either the Shrine or the Senior Bowl, right? Yeah. So definitely somebody to take a look at. From the wide receiver department, Puka Nakua is out of BYU. BYU kind of had a not as good as expected year. Their offense was expected to do really well. But I think Puka is going to fly under the radar. Unlike a lot of BYU prospects, he didn't spend time on the mission. So he won't be 22 until May, right? Whereas his quarterback is like 25 coming out, right? He's got good speed. He's a playmaker. He's got sideline presence. He was used as a rusher as well, where he showed some good signs as a rusher. I think coming out of BYU, it's not as good a program as some other schools, but I think he's kind of flying under the radar. 6'1", 210, that's pretty good size. Somebody to keep an eye on. And let's see, this guy, I love it. Andre Iosivas, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's got the name of an Eastern European basketball player, right?
Straight out of Russia.
Yeah, he played football at Ivy League Princeton, right? But got an invite to the Senior Bowl, which you don't see a lot of guys coming out of Princeton, getting an invite to the Senior Bowl. 6'3", 200, bit of an older prospect. But somebody to keep your eye on, right? When you see somebody come out of Princeton getting an invite to the Senior Bowl, where Jim Nagy really doesn't invite people unless they're probably going to be in the first 5 rounds of the NFL draft, he's a name worth taking a look at. I'm going to end with 2 tight ends, which is going to transition into your last take. Tucker Kraft South Dakota State, right? So we're talking FCS. Big boy Tucker Kraft, 6'5", 255, out of South Dakota State. I think he's going to be somebody to take a look at. Good hands, good size, an aggressive run blocker. I think he's worth taking a look at. Obviously, he's raw. He's coming out of a small school, but we've seen Lance, Watson, Pierre Strong get valued highly coming out of, FCS. So somebody to take a look at. And then one of my faves, probably my tight end 3 at this point, but gosh, he could be my 2. And that's Darnell Washington, 6'7", 265, with, some athleticism and hands, and is a pro-ready blocker. He's going to be a problem for a lot of folks. So, Kraft and Washington, I think, are going to transition into your next point. But just wanted a couple more comments here in the chat. Julia, been a minute since we heard from Julia. Good to see you. What up, Brian and Josh? Good Saturday. Apologize for being late. Come on. You have a life. It's Saturday night. There's an NFL game on. Come on. And let's see. Charbonnet is number 2 for your in Julia's running backs this year. I think he is underrated, especially relative to where you have him. But I definitely think he's rising. Second round remains to be seen. I think with running back in the NFL, I think he's more likely to be like a third rounder, fourth rounder maybe. But I don't know. What do you think, Josh, about that?
Yeah, on your old point between Charbonnet and Evans, I think Charbonnet is a little underrated with his hands from what I've seen and read. He has pretty good hands for his size, so I think he's going to show out, and I like him more than Zach Evans on that. But I think you're right. I think it could be like a third round. I don't know if he'll get pushed up to the second round, but even third round is really not that bad for him. Mm-hmm. And
Julia also asking us about Izzy Abanaconda. You're late. You missed it. We had an Izzy love fest earlier, so I think you might like that. And then she's asking how we compare him to Dwayne McBride. Yeah, there's a concern about Dwayne McBride, with the competition. I just think that Izzy's just overall better. Dwayne McBride doesn't have, I think, the soft hands that, for the receiving game. I think he has probably even less athleticism, pure athleticism than Izzy. But I like him. I happen to like McBride. For me, he's toward the end of that tier of running backs that are like these all these guys could go like late second to early fifth, right, in the NFL draft. And draft capital and landing spot are going to matter a lot. For what it's worth, McBride led the NCAA in rushing, this year. Good physical runner, probably a 2-down profile. But what do you know? Have you looked much at McBride? He's not exactly a guy that a lot of people are talking about.
I haven't yet. I've seen the name pop up, and he's definitely on my list for like tape to watch. But
I had him in C2C. That's why I kind of already knew about him.
Yeah, he was first in rushing, but I mean, Izzy was 14th and tied for first in touchdowns. So a lot better at missing tackles, catching the ball, like you said. So I'll take Izzy over.
All right, so I ended my spiel with Tucker Kraft in Washington as far as tight ends, which leads us into your last rookie take.
Yeah, so I think this tight end class, everyone was talking about last year's class having a decent bit of tight ends. I think there's not as many prospects that are like be drafted in rookie drafts, but I do think some of them are being slept on this early at least. Starting with one of my favorite players, Michael Mayer. I'll start off by saying I'm a Notre Dame fan, so take things I say with a grain of salt. But either way, I already have him as a top 7 or 8 dynasty tight end, and depending on the landing spot, he could be top 5. He checks all the boxes you want that NFL teams want in a tight end. He's some places say 250, some places say 265, but either way, he's got good size. He's a solid blocker. There's still a little bit of room to improvement, but it's not a weakness in his game. It's not like he can't get in line and block. And he's a really good route runner, really fluid in the open field for his size. He led all the tight ends in, I think, target percentage for routes he ran. It was like almost 30, 40%. And he's really in a tier of his own. But after that is where I kind of differentiate from some other people. I have Darnell Washington as my early tight end too, with Kraft coming in at 3. Just because I think that raw size or the size and, some of the slightly raw skills, I think can play well at the next level. I think Washington has really good hands for his size. He can go up and make contested catches. And that dude's just going to be a problem, not only running the ball, but also in the red zone. Like, he's just going to body linebackers out of the way. And then in the open field, he does have the top-end speed to outrun linebackers. So I think he's going to be a mismatch and a big red zone threat. And then I haven't dove in as much on Kraft, Kincaid, and Musgraves, but those 3 guys will also be solid. And I'll definitely have more to say about them. But right now, I do like Kraft a lot, even though he is FCS. I just like a good size tight end that can run in the open field and catch some balls. So,
yeah, I like Kincaid. Yeah, he's my 2, and Washington's my 3 at the moment. But that could easily change. But see, I think it's worth talking about the 2022 tight end class for a second, though, as well, to sort of frame this, because at this point in the year last year, like January-ish, we were being told, right, it's McBride, Wiedermeyer, and then who the heck knows. And then, like, those had started creeping up a little bit. But, we were told it's not a good class, right?
Yeah.
And, now look at it, right? We've got McBride, Dulcich, Jelani, Chig, Otten, Bellinger, right?
All Rucker, too, who I think has still got talent.
Yeah, all doing well already, right? All flashing. And so Isaiah Likely, I forgot, right? So, tight ends, I don't know. Since they take a long time to develop, who knows, right? Like, we could be, we're looking at this class and going, it's Mayer, a few other guys, and not much. Who knows, right? There might be a Chig, who I had ranked like 8th or 9th in my tight ends, and now, he's doing really well. They're especially, when you have different kinds of tight ends, and tight ends are used differently now in the NFL. Like, a guy who, can't block may not get on the field much, but in the right offense that doesn't need him to block, right? That can move the tight end around and big slot and all that, like, like Likely, that's not as much of a hindrance, right? Say a tight end goes to the Lions, right? They've got Brock Wright to block, right? They don't necessarily need that rookie coming in to be a great blocker, right? They do have Mitchell, who's more athletic, and I think is may take a step forward this year. But just off the top of my head, that's an example of you can go into the NFL, not be a great blocker, but if you the right body type and they use you the right way, you can still succeed.
On that point, just picture next year Brock Bowers going to the Dolphins, who ran Gesicki in the slot, 75, 80% of his routes. Just imagine Brock Bowers. And so, I mean, like you said, Brock Bowers is not very early on. He's not coming out this year, but next year he's a smaller tight end. So
one thing that makes me worry, though, is not just the presence of Tyreek Hill, but the new coaching, the new offense didn't really use Gesicki well, right? He kind of became an afterthought. I think Gesicki as a free agent is going to go somewhere that uses him well, and I think is a very good value right now. I think is a very good buy low. Yeah. So I would be worried, actually, if Bowers made it to Miami. But then again, he's Brock Bowers, right? And, he's a beast. Yeah. So, who knows?
And
right?
I think he's already a better receiving tight end, just pure like going out there and catching passes, run after the catch thing, Gesicki. But he does like all those intangibles. And the only reason I say that is I think if a team goes out and gets a guy not willing to block, I think they're going to figure out ways to use him in their offense as opposed to McDaniels coming in Gesicki already or something like that. So.
All right. I have to be accountable. I can't hide this in the chat. Brian, are you still high on Brevin Jordan in this coming season in Houston, or are you dropping him in your tight end dynasty ranking? So we talked a couple times this year on the show about like losses, taking big L's and where we've been wrong and then disappointments and that sort of thing. Yeah, Brevin Jordan is one of them. Was it really good process to have a day 3 tight end that wasn't super athletic get excited about him as much as I was? Probably not. The thinking going into this year about liking him was that he flashed, he showed growth. Mills showed growth, and that when you throw in Nico and Cooks, and that they would add a better running game to use play action, right? And he had chemistry with Mills, that he could take a step forward. I wasn't, but I was wrong, right? I will say this though. Yes, I have dropped him in my rankings. He went from like 12 or 14 to now he's in like the mid 30s, right? Tight ends take a while. Next year's his third year, right? We see a lot of tight ends in their third year, break out or, figure it out or that sort of thing. He's going to have, we would hope, a better quarterback, maybe Bryce Young. We would hope, a better coaching staff. We would hope the overall offense will improve. They'll probably add a complement back for Pierce and maybe a wide receiver. A lot of folks are mocking JSN or Addison to Houston. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not – listen, was I wrong? Yeah. Is it very possible that better days are ahead? Yes. So that's my honest take on my Brevin Jordan failures so far.
No, I agree. And I think that offense was so bad this year, a lot worse than people expected. I think Bryce Young stepping in, they're automatically going to be considerably better than they were this year with Mills. So,
all right. So let's land the plane here. Any final thoughts about the 2023 rookies so far? Anything that we didn't cover? Any sort of advice or anything you want to give to folks?
Just keep watching, because this is honestly this week was the very first time I've actually dove into the rookies, because I've been trying to wrap up, the playoffs, all this other stuff, and we're just now getting back into it. So just stay tuned. Opinions are going to change. By the end of the draft, before the season, I might have a completely different take about some of these guys. So, yeah. Plenty of time to change.
I would say, I would ditto all that. I would also say beware of narrative. And I'm guilty of it sometimes too, right? But people want certain prospects to succeed. People have the narrative in their mind already that it's a riser. So, you know what I mean? But just go on as much sort of raw, basic information as you can, whether that's a film grade or an analytics number or whatever it is, right? Like, try to cut out the noise as much as possible, because we're going to have 4 months now where all we're going to do is bicker on Twitter about these rookies.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. All right. So if you're listening on the Going for Two Live audio podcast feed, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching us here on the YouTubes, whether it's live or later on, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, click the thumbs up to like the video, and turn on those notifications. Also, Going for Two has a whole family of content. We've got articles on the website, goingfor2.com, with, sort of our off-season schedule now going to be like player breakouts and prospect profiles and, free agency articles and that sort of thing. We still have podcasts going, including ours, including Dynasty Gambit on Thursdays, and others. Speak On It on Tuesday. They do a great job on Speak On It. And obviously others too that I'm forgetting. But also, when you go to goingfor2.com, on the bottom right, you'll see the little purple thingy like with the Discord logo. Click on that, hop in the Discord. The Discord itself is free. There's hella channels with a lot of talk, whether it's redraft, dynasty, Devy, props, DFS. We're going to run mock drafts and mock rookie drafts in the mock draft channel, so there's going to be links to those drafts in that channel. So, make sure you join the Discord. It's a really good place to be. Time for plugs. Josh, tell us where folks can find you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Rotonaut, ROTONAUT. And also hop in that Discord. I just joined an orphan. There's a bunch of open leagues. Try and get in a league, I guess me or Brian or something. There's plenty of opportunities to have fun and talk football in the Discord. You can find my off-season articles at goingfor2.com. I just updated my Dynasty rankings, but I need to go through and do them again. So I'll keep updating those through the off-season.
Right on. Oh, which reminds me that we're also going to be adding rookie rankings to that Dynasty rankings page.
Awesome.
So Yeah, so please make sure that you take a look
Yep.
at that, which is ongoing for 2.com, which is also where my Dynasty rankings are. I'll be writing more now that it's the off season. I don't know exactly what yet. Maybe some free agency running backs or prospect profile, something. I'll be writing more than I used to. You can find me at Twitter at @FFJunkie_. You can also find me on the Dynasty Fever podcast at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter. We record on Wednesdays and it drops on Thursdays. And you can find me being really mad that people don't tag folks OTC on Sleeper. Did you catch that one, Josh, or were you distracted?
I'm responding to Julie on the YouTube channel. So yeah, you caught my ADHD right in the worst spot.
No, it's okay. It's probably better.
And I had a typo. Oh my goodness. Yeah, tag discipline, guys. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Let's go. Team tag discipline. Don't get me started. All right, folks. That's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us. We will see you next week, 7:30 Eastern, live on the YouTubes, and of course later on your podcast feed.
Go Irish.
By the way, I Googled mayor and the mayonnaise in the coffee. Nothing came up.
Okay. Yeah, I told you.
We'll see.
Fake news.